Okay, welcome to Dominate Your Day. I'm Dana Williams, and I'm excited to have an amazing guest with us today. I have Eva Daniels, or Eva Daniel, and she is from Nashville, right now in Nashville, Tennessee, by the way of Colorado Springs. So she worked at Focus on the Family and then worked for Dave Ramsey as his speechwriter. And now she has her own business called the Speak Shop. Welcome to the show, Eva.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun.
It is fun, and I'm excited because I lived in Nashville for a while. You're in Nashville. We were just talking in the green room. What an amazing city that is for entrepreneurship and young families, and just lots of growth. Is that what is still that way, right? In Nashville,
Absolutely. We've been here about 5.5 years, and we can't even believe how much the city has grown. But I love it from just the creativity in the city, and there's so many small businesses and entrepreneurs and just really amazing people. And plus, once in a while, you'll see a famous person like shopping in Costco alongside you. So that adds a little bit of element of fun there as well.
It was when I was in Nashville, this was late 80s. We were starting the first downtown mall. And one of the things we wanted to do was have live entertainment in the mall downtown every day, which was it was the Sheraton Convention Center. Now it's the Country Music Hall of Fame or something. It's the museum. But anyway, one of the things that happened was we got live artists every day performing, and worked with the Arts Commission there in Nashville. And we had some great people come through. So I was kind of like, you always like, who's that? Who's that?
Well, who's in the grocery store? We've been so amazed. On Friday nights, we'll go to this dive Mexican restaurant. We live about 30 miles south of Nashville, but everywhere you go here has live music. And even at this dive Mexican restaurant we go to, the music's incredible. I mean, it's a guy just with this guitar case because so many people move to the city to pursue their music dreams, or they have a passion there. And so just the live music, pretty much everywhere you go, you'll be like, wow, that person's really good. And they'll just be, a Mexican restaurant or on a corner, playing their guitar with the open case. So it is a really fun city for live music as well.
I wish that I had the gift of singing, because literally,
you do not want to hear me sing.
No. I would watch like our director of maintenance would just belt out this amazing song, and I would go, oh my gosh, that is amazing. So welcome from Nashville to Dallas. Welcome to Dominate Your Day, where we really are passionate about leaders in the workplace and how they're difference makers and they want to make an impact. So today I want to hear your story about how you created the Speak Shop and how you got passionate about helping people be great speakers. And tell us the story. And along the way, you've had 4 kids. You've got a lot going on. So yeah, tell us your story.
Well, I did found the Speak Shop a little over 2 years ago, and really to come alongside leaders and CEOs to help them become more confident in their public speaking, whether that's developing out the content or on their delivery side, really helping empower them to figure out, okay, what am I trying to say? How do I say it in a way that's authentic and confident? Also, I work with a lot of professional speakers who make their living speaking. But I really, the catalyst to starting this business a couple years ago really goes back for me about 15 years ago. I was a radio producer in Colorado, and one of my jobs was to vet potential guests to see if they would be a good fit for our program. So I would do a pre-interview on the phone. I would call them up and I would just ask them questions. And a lot of these guests had written books. They had gotten books with traditional publishers. And here they had these amazing stories that truly needed to be shared with the world. They had overcome great things or accomplished great things or, overcome just big obstacles or helped other people do the same. And I would get these potential guests on the phone, and it was amazing to me how many of them struggled to share their story verbally. Here they had written it down and it was amazing. But when it came to actually telling their stories or conveying their information, even sometimes if it was like how-tos, it wasn't necessarily like this deep moving story. Sometimes it was just, hey, five ways to have better communication in your marriage or a topic like that. But I had this recurring pattern where people just really struggled to communicate. And I had been a speech major in college, had been in the radio space, really passionate about. So in my like mid to late 20s, I had this whole idea for a business that I was going to call From Book to Mic, taking the page to the platform. I thought it was so clever, in my 20s. Maybe still clever, I don't know. But it took a little while because in my late 20s, I kind of had the awareness, okay, I know a lot about the industry. I know I could help people, but I didn't feel like I was really there yet in terms of launching my own business, starting my own thing. And then it's kind of like the decade of chaos and busyness of having those 4 kids, getting married, having 4 kids. And then an opportunity arose to be a speechwriter for Dave Ramsey. And I'd followed his company for a long time. I'd gone Financial Peace University in my mid-20s, and it helped me get out of student loan debt. So I was always really passionate about working for Dave. And so when the position opened here in the Nashville area, I was like, oh my gosh, well, I feel like I should apply. But at the time I was pregnant with my 3rd. And so I was like, I don't know. My husband's like, well, of course you're going to apply. So that's what initially brought us to Nashville. I worked for Dave for a little under 4 years, and his team of speakers, learned a lot more about communication and speeches and what makes a great presentation. And then, a couple years ago, I realized that dream that I'd had in my heart for my late 20s wasn't going anywhere. I realized, wow, this is 2 years ago. I realized I'm about to turn 40. I'm still working for someone else. What are you doing with your life? And so I end of August of 2022, I quit my job to start the Speak Shop. And there's a lot of hard days, but I'm so glad that I went for it, because it's been really rewarding and also just fun.
I bet. And it's interesting. I talk to a lot of, and a lot of women, but a lot of people that are in the career space, and they've had that dream, but they're scared to make those steps.
It's scary.
You've done it with, and what do you think helped you as you made that transition from corporate to your own business? What was the number one thing that really helped you?
Well, I think one of the things that really did help was a really supportive spouse. And so when I made the jump, so my husband's a stay-at-home dad to our 4 kids. And so when I made the jump, to your point, it was really scary because I was looking at our bank account, and I was sole breadwinner because my husband stays home with the kids. And we had like 3 months of savings, and I knew that I had $3,000 a month coming in for 2 months because I'd been side hustling while at the day job. I'd picked up few clients. And that initial transition, it's sort of for anyone that, has made it, they can relate. For anybody that hasn't made it yet, it's both exhilarating and terrifying all at once. And you kind of yo-yo between those 2 emotions. We're like, I did it. This is amazing. This is incredible. And then, oh, what am I doing? And so there's definitely a lot of emotions that come with it. But I think one of the things that was really helpful to me was a supportive spouse. And then the other one, working at Ramsey Solutions, it's a very entrepreneurial culture. So even though the company's over 1,000 people or around 1,000 people, a lot of people leave to go and start their own businesses. And so I did launch knowing several other small business owners here in the Nashville area that, like week 1, I was like, how do you register an LLC in Tennessee? And how do you open a business bank account? I had so many questions, and now even looking back, it's a little comical, like things that seemed overwhelming in that first month that now it's like, oh, well, that was the easy part. But I do think having that supportive community really did help on that initial launch.
I kind of feel our interview going 2 places, which I'm going to take it both places.
Okay, that's great.
Through, that transition as a busy mom of 4. And I loved how you talked about your husband and the support. So really just that entrepreneurial journey. And then I want to also share the great gold you have of tips for whether they're entrepreneurs or leaders in the workplace, and how to create that great speech and use that. So I want to go both directions, if that's okay. And
sounds great.
Okay. So I want to finish a little bit on the entrepreneurial journey. So having your spouse, number 1, having people around you at Dave Ramsey that had left. And number 3, I loved what I heard. And that was that you had started a little bit of testing and learning to see, is this going to work? And you did a little side hustle with it. And I think that's one of the things. I don't recommend anybody leaving their job cold and then saying, okay, come come buy something for me. I'm ready to go. It's really, let's test it out for a couple of years or a year or so and give yourself that break. Was that something that you got advice, or you just it just started happening as people were reaching out to you?
Well, a couple things within that. One, I did just kind of start side hustling because someone was like, "Hey, my pastor really is not the best, communicator, and he has some challenges. Do you think you could work with him?" And then I started posting on LinkedIn, and then I got a couple clients there. And so part of it was a little bit organic, as far as starting that side hustle. But then also someone along the way, and I wish I remembered who it was, said that it's a pretty good benchmark that you can quit your day job when your side hustle makes half of what you're making. That if your side hustle gets up to like half of what you're making, that if you make the jump, you can have full confidence that it's going to work. So full transparency, I had 1 month that like almost met half, and I was like, okay, we can do this. Because I got to the point with working a really busy job and with 4 kids. I mean, you can only do so much side hustle wise. I mean, it's exhausting to essentially work 2 jobs at once and parent and be a homeowner and have a dog and, all the other life things. But I do encourage anyone who's considering it. First of all, you need to see if there's kind of a market for what it is that you want to do. And one thing I don't think I realized until I launched was you actually need to make a lot more than you think you need to make because of things like taxes and business expenses and some of those pieces that when you're working for someone else and, just your W-2 employee, you might not be aware, number one, of how much is even coming out of your paycheck because you just, get it auto, dropped into your account. But then also when you're a business owner, it is that balance of, taxes and expenses. And so more than likely, you're only going to be taking half, maybe 60%. Obviously every industry can be different, but I was a little bit blindsided at the beginning of how much taxes were because you're just paying, more taxes because you don't have an employer paying them, and things like health insurance you have to figure out. And so there's just more expenses than you might realize when you're dreaming about the business. And that's not to dissuade anyone, but it's more to just, hey, go in it with the recognition that like, okay, like you might need to make a little bit more than you initially thought.
I had somebody that reached out to me on LinkedIn just this week and said, I really want to go on my own. I'm in corporate, but I'm scared of not having a community. It wasn't about the money or the business. It was the community because I love my community at work. And one of the things we talk about here a lot is creating that virtual roundtable of people around you that have all those skills you don't. So what did you do from moving from a community at Ramsey to then on your own? Did you just have different people you could call? Or did you kind of create that virtual roundtable for yourself? Who became your community?
Well, I'm still working on it. Because I do think it's really, I had worked for larger companies, and it is in some ways, especially when you're starting out, you're going from community and colleagues to choosing isolation. And one thing I think that is challenging is that no one cares about your business in the same way that you do. So even if you have people in your space that are encouraging and speaking into it, people are not necessarily like in it with you. Even if you have, employees or contractors, because it's like to a degree, it's your baby. That being said, I have been really blessed to be able to join a Wednesday morning entrepreneur group that has a wide range of businesses in it. And I have a couple of virtual groups as well where we, text ideas back and forth that which really helps as well. But it is lonely. I mean, especially I'm very extroverted. And so a lot of times I miss sometimes that iron sharpening iron of the creativity of the big projects, because just when you're working on your own, it's not the same level. So you have to kind of readjust your work styles, okay, how these pieces that are missing in my life, how can I fill that through community? And also recognizing, hey, some things you just have to kind of develop an extra level of grit and a gear that you didn't know you had to kind of push through and persevere. That, okay, well, my strength isn't technology. I'm a words person. I'm a speechwriter. To a degree, though, I still am going to have to figure out how to troubleshoot some of these tech things, and I'll be watching a YouTube video to figure it out. or finances or whatever the area might be. And I always say, you can hire anybody to do anything, but that also comes with its own level. Then you have to have money to be able to hire them. So as an entrepreneur, you just figure out how to do, wear a lot of hats and do a lot of different things.
That's right. And being okay to go to Google or to call somebody and ask for help. One of the things I love about strengths that we talk about a lot is knowing what you do best and then going and finding those other people and knowing we don't have
to help on those. And it was really funny. I'd been out on my own for probably about 3 months, and I could not figure out this thing on my computer. And it was like, well, why is this not, why is this not loading? Like, why am I having so much trouble with this? And I was like, okay, Eva, think, if you were still working in an office and you were to call the IT department, what would they tell you to do? And I was like, they would tell me to restart my computer. And so I restarted my computer, and then the thing worked. And I laughed, of course, because I feel, 90% of the time when I was working for someone else and I had a tech problem, IT would be like, restart your computer. And so sometimes, it is both. I think finding people and then also just kind of realizing like, okay, there are some areas I need to grow and learn and develop, and I don't get to work in my strengths every single moment of every single day, and that's okay. And I'm going to learn how to adapt and adjust.
That's great. And I think that we just want to encourage you, if you're out there and you're just getting ready to go on your own, it's okay. There are networking groups, there are sources, but know your unique talents. Like, you need to be around people and you get energy from people, right? From speaking. So it's making sure that your networking groups are in person and that you get that opportunity to do that.
Well, and you and I connected on LinkedIn. And I also say, to me personally, like, LinkedIn has been such a supportive community. There's a few others on the platform. We just happened to start our businesses at around the same time. And so it's been fun and encouraging, just even on that social media platform, to find community within there as well.
Okay, now let's talk LinkedIn, because Eva, I am so impressed with you. If you've been in business 10 years and you have 32,000 people on your LinkedIn, what is your magic secret? What is it that you started doing 2 years ago when you started your LinkedIn that has really served you in growing your reach?
Well, probably like a lot of listeners, I viewed LinkedIn as a place where resumes went to go and die. That's a place where you posted jobs, looked for jobs. HR recruiters were scanning, resumes. And I didn't really think of it as a social platform. I mean, I had been on the platform since 2008, had never posted. I actually think I posted once 4 years ago, but I basically never posted on the platform at all. And then about 3 years ago, my Facebook account was hacked. It was never recovered. And I sort of got mad, and I looked over and I was like, wait, when does LinkedIn become this content sharing platform? And so I just decided to start posting. And one thing I tell people that have not dug in on LinkedIn in terms of engaging and posting and commenting, now is your moment. It's an incredible platform. It sounds so dramatic to say LinkedIn changed my life, but LinkedIn has changed my life. I mean, about half of my clients come through LinkedIn. I have literally met friends. I've gotten to be on podcasts like this. So many doors and opportunities have opened just from choosing to say, I'm going to engage here. I'm going to spend, at the beginning, I was going to spend 15 minutes a day, not including the posts that I would, write, but I'm going to just spend 15 minutes a day and post things and comment on people's and see what happened. And then of course that progressed. But one of the things I always tell people, when you're thinking about starting to post on LinkedIn, pick one topic. Pick the one thing that you want to be known for in the platform and write about it 1,000 ways. So, if your passion like mine is public speaking, I mean, I write about public speaking 80, 90% of the time, and my posts are going to be about that because I'm so passionate about the topic. But pick that one topic and set a goal. Maybe for you, that goal is, I'm going to post every Tuesday morning. And you just start with a post a week, but it's an incredible platform. And I still think so many people are underutilizing it. Obviously, there's a lot of keys to growth, but my biggest tip is, post about one thing and just be really generous with your life experiences, the things you've learned professionally. How can you help others in the area that you have a knowledge base in? How can you help others grow in their understanding and their knowledge? And so that's just what I try to do every day, is post public speaking tips that I feel like, wow, I've had this incredible opportunity in my life to get to work with these incredible leaders and speakers, and how can I share these tips that I have learned from them with everybody else? It's like, okay, well, that's great that, Dave Ramsey speaks that way, but how does it actually apply to you and me on a Tuesday morning? Or how does it apply, on that smaller presentation that we might giving to 20 or 30 people? So how can I take those big principles I have had the chance to learn and just make them applicable for the rest of us? So that's been my goal of how I approach content. But I encourage everybody, find out what your thing is. What are you passionate about? What can you talk about 1,000 different ways because you love it so much? And just start posting and try it. Give it a solid 90 days and just see what the results are. Because I also have made real life friends from the platform too, which was a surprise I was not expecting.
I love that. I love too that you are really giving value out when you're talking. You're not just being out there to sell anything. You're out there just to share your knowledge. I couldn't help but wonder, Eva, if this is how you coach your speakers when they've got to create content. Let's take the bridge over into that area.
Yeah.
When you saw this opportunity, when you were, at Dave Ramsey, and also your history from 15 years ago when you were thinking about this with speakers, what is the problem you're solving there? And how's that same relate with what you were doing with LinkedIn, how you were coaching, how you're creating content on LinkedIn with how you're helping these speakers? I know there's two questions in there, but how do you, I'm excited to learn about this and how you're bridging that gap.
Well, I think a lot of writing content, writing a speech can feel very overwhelming, especially if the presentation, it can be really overwhelming if you only have 5 minutes. It can also be really overwhelming if you have 60 minutes or anywhere in between those two numbers. So writing a speech can feel very overwhelming because a lot of people, they have not had a public speaking class since high school or college, if they even took a public speaking class. And more than likely, the high school or that college class you took, you had to give a persuasive speech about while the school cafeteria should serve burgers on Friday, or some funny, silly topic that maybe you gave your sophomore year of high school. But it can be a little hard to translate. Okay, first of all, even if I remember that class I maybe took 20 or 30 years ago, how does it apply to this marketing presentation I'm giving about the, Q3 numbers or, whatever the scenario is? And so I really like with my clients to figure out, okay, this overwhelming topic, how do we make it more manageable? How do we break it down? And there are a lot of, I've created a lot for my clients as well of just, hey, here are some different frameworks you can use to just bucket your content, to bring a flow to it. Like, okay, what makes a great open? These kinds of things like, okay, what problem does this speech solve? Okay, what are your solutions to the problem? How are we going to resolve any of these loose ends? How are we going to close it? And because I hear so many speeches, I mean, I've probably already heard a couple hundred speeches this year. I start seeing a lot of patterns in speeches. So it's really usually pretty clear to me of what pieces are missing. And oftentimes that really is things like storytelling and how do we tell better stories. And so I work with clients on all of these pieces of just figuring out, okay, from a content perspective, how can you create a speech that you're proud to deliver more quickly, that has good flow, that's audience centric, that has all these pieces, and then as well as the delivery. A lot of leaders know, even just hearing this topic of public speaking, some of them might have even skip this podcast, or they have nerves. Maybe you're listening and you have nerves, but there's a lot of things you can do, even like your mindset, of how can you reframe this to, like I told my sixth grader, he had to give a science presentation, science fair last year. And I said, hey, he's all nervous. I said, hey, no, like I tell my clients, that's not nerves. That's excitement waiting to be expressed. And he, of course, rolled his eyes, which, I'm sure some of the listeners are doing as well. But there's a lot of different mindset things you can do when it comes to the nerves and, even some physical things you can do, as well as that delivery side as well. How do you deliver it with confidence? What are some of those body language techniques that you can use to be a more compelling communicator? And so I just love helping clients, break down the pieces, and everyone comes at it from a different level and from a different challenges. Some clients have incredible content, but they lack vocal variety. So how are we going to work on that? Other clients, they're really dynamic, but their content's kind of shallow and they don't have a lot of depth there. So how can we elevate them to their level of expertise? And so it's kind of one of those, to me, it's fun. To me, it's like a puzzle. Every speech is like a puzzle where sometimes, you start with all of these pieces and you're just trying to figure out, okay, what's going to make the best picture? But unlike a puzzle where it's like every piece has a spot, sometimes with a speech, you just have to try pieces in different spots, or sometimes you have pieces that don't fit the image. And so it's really just determining like, okay, what does a speech need and how can we elevate it up so that you are excited to give it? Because every speech that you give, you should feel excited because you were asked to give a presentation. You have this opportunity to share your professional expertise, or if you have a incredible personal story. And so I want everyone to use that opportunity and really embrace the moment and be confident in what they're delivering. I know that was a long answer, but as you can tell, I get really passionate about public speaking.
But I think there's a lot of commonality between whether you're preparing a LinkedIn content or you're preparing a speech and putting it in frameworks, working on your mindset, the things that block us from getting that workout, right?
Yes.
And I'm always doing that. So do you have a story of one of your clients or somebody, you don't have to say names, but somebody that came to you and how you helped them transform their speaking or shared, they came to you and they're like, I've got to speak, whether it could be a pastor, it could be anybody that came to you and how you helped them. Because I think people will remember that, because there's a lot of people out there that just stop and don't do something. Because what is public speaking? Is that the number one scariest thing that is usually on all the list of things that are the most stressful?
There's that great, it's the number one fear is public speaking, and the second one is death. And there's this great Jerry Seinfeld clip that's like, public speaking's number one, death is number two. That means that if you're at a funeral, you'll be better off in the casket than giving the eulogy. He has this great line about it. But there is a lot of fear and intimidation around it. And yeah, so I would say in terms of clients, without saying names, I was working with a client this last year who, and I would say his problem is fairly typical of a lot of people. Like I was just saying, he had all the pieces there, but they weren't really organized in the most interesting way. And so he was giving a speech, and I encourage every professional, you should consider developing a signature speech based on your expertise. And a signature speech is just the speech you want to be known for. So you should be able, whether it's a, 10, 15 minute or up to 30 or 45 minute version of just, if someone were to ask you to come and speak about your industry, what are you talking about? But he was doing a few things, a few mistakes that I see a lot of people make in speaking. And the first was he was spending the first couple of minutes of his presentation saying, oh, it's so great to be here. And wow, I haven't been in Texas in so long and it's always so hot and blah, blah, blah. It's very, very boring beginning. And I always tell people, you want to grab your audience's attention. The opening of your talk is the most important part of your entire presentation, because the audience is evaluating whether or not they want to listen to you and whether or not, how interested they're going to be. So I worked with this client to develop what I call a scene that's a cold open. So when you think about a story, a big story, a big story is made up a lot of these different little scenes. So pick one moment, and instead of giving all of the backstory and all of the linear facts to get there, just dive right in. So what that would sound like, for him, it was sort of hey, it was June 12 of 2017 and my life was changed forever. Ooh, well, we want to know what happened. What happened next? And then he goes into the story about this car wreck and the impact that it had on his life. But don't waste your beginning. So anyone listening, don't waste the beginning of your talk on pleasantries. If possible, dive right in with a story. Another challenge that he had that I see a lot of people make is he didn't have any level of sticky framework within his talk or anything memorable. And it's amazing how just organizing your information, whether it's into maybe just an acronym of, hey, today I'm going to give you the SPARK method of speaking. That's mine. Or today we're going to talk about call, CALL, or you can create an acronym around something. Or maybe you have, an alliterative thing where if you're sharing 3 principles, maybe they all start with the same letter, or maybe it's a framework, but having some level of memorable way to have your content flow. A lot of times when we're writing a speech, we'll just smack ideas down and then we don't really think a lot more of it. So having a flow, having an order, and then having a good close, that kind of bookends it. And then one thing he was doing, this happens a lot too, give a preview for your talk. So you want to open that talk, but then you want to tell people where you're going. A lot of times we hear presentations and we have no idea where they're going. And so give your audience a preview. And I always say on the ending of a talk, if you're speaking at an industry conference or event, don't end your presentation on a Q&A, because if you end on a Q&A, you have given the control of your ending over to the last question asker. I love Q&A. I think it can be really interactive, but you still want to make sure that you've saved 3 to 5 minutes in a powerful, strong close to wrap up all of your content. Because again, you want to own your beginning and own your ending. So in this case with the client, he had fantastic content. He was good at delivering it, but his open and his close were weak, and the flow of his content wasn't memorable or engaging. And so sometimes just making those little tweaks can make a huge impact on your speaking.
I love that. And I had not heard this, but what power this is in not putting the Q&A at the end. But
yeah, towards the end is great, but not at the very close. It should not be your close. It can be towards the end, but it should not be your ending.
I love that. So when you think about speaking and you think about those 3 common mistakes you see, the opening has got to be strong, the ending has got to be strong. One of the things I read in your content and at your website was that people are too close to their content. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate on that for just a minute? So those of you that are out there working on a presentation right now, I want you to think about your content as you hear Eva talk about this.
It's easy for us to get too close to our content. I'm too close to my content. You're too close to yours. What that means is we know all of the backstory, all of the back information. We know a lot more about the topic. But as a result, sometimes we assume that other people know a lot more than they actually do know. And sometimes when we get too close to our content, it's really hard for us to see, well, what should stay? What should go? Is this interesting to my audience? Because it's interesting to me. As everyone can tell, they're like, that was a long answer. Yeah, I could nerd out for a long time on any question you ask. But we can all get too close to our content. So the best way around that is to get in the habit anytime before you're giving a presentation, run it through someone else for feedback. And ideally, that person that you run it through will not be an immediate colleague or your spouse, because they are also too close to your content, because they know you, they know the backstory, they were there when the thing happened, they were part of the project. Ideally, instead, you'll run that content through someone else to input into it, give you feedback so that you can, iron out any of the parts that maybe aren't clear or that need to be leveled up. And so it's easy to get too close to your content. And so you need an outside voice to speak into it.
And that's part of what you do as a coach, as a speaking coach, right? And I would think that is hard, because I always go to my husband, and you're right. He's going to have his own bias about it. And
I always genuinely say with spouses, either they're too honest or not honest enough. Sometimes just depending on how long you've been married, how honest they can be. And then you can hurt your feelings and be like, well, I thought it was really good.
That's awesome. When we get right now, I think, my gosh, you've given us so many tips on LinkedIn and also on speaking. Is there one thing that's coming up for you right now as we get ready to close out that you want to make sure people know as they're working on? And what I see, Eva, it's not just a speech, but it could be you're going in to sell something to the board, or you're going in to influence somebody about a new product, or you're going into a sales call. I see it all. Is that how you're?
I love that you brought that up, because I use the word speech a lot, but by speech, I don't mean this grandiose presentation in front of a lot of people. It can just be a virtual one-on-one presentation where you're pitching a new, something to a client. So I love that you expanded that out. I think your question was, is there any kind of final thing that they can do?
Yes, or anything that's coming up for you that maybe we didn't get to talk about today that you want to make sure you mention with the audience as they're thinking about their own presentations or how they're presenting themselves as a thought leader in the workspace.
Yeah, well, the thing I would like to say is that anyone can do it. It's a skill. Public speaking, writing on LinkedIn, content creation is a skill just like any other. It is learned and it is developed. And so if you look at whoever the iconic speaker is to you, whether that's, someone that's dead or alive, and you think, wow, like I could never be like, speak like Martin Luther King Jr. or, somebody, Tony Robbins, or fill in the blank. All of those people at one point didn't have all of the chops that they had on that iconic moment when they delivered an amazing speech. It's a skill that's just like any other that is practiced and developed over time. And the only way that you're going to get there is through lots of repetitions, lots and lots of reps, whether that's posting on LinkedIn. You know what? Your first dozen, your first 30, 40, 50 posts might not be great. But if you stick at it and you keep writing and you keep learning and you keep iterating, your writing is going to get better. Speaking, if you raise your hand in the meeting and just go, even if the way you approach meetings of, hey, the next meeting I attend, I am going to think about the meeting ahead of time. I'm going to be fully engaged and I'm going to contribute something meaningful verbally. All of those little skills build on themselves. And so when you look at these incredible speakers, they are incredible because they have done the work. They have put in the time to really develop their communication skills. And obviously a caveat, some of them were in specific cultural moments where they had, this opportunity to be a voice in that moment. But you can be a voice in the moment that you're in. And so look for the opportunities, practice, iterate, and choose to get better. None of us are born knowing how to write really well and speak really well. It's skills that we develop and grow over time.
Eva, I love that. When you were talking about speakers, I just heard this the other day and I had no idea. C.S. Lewis, he said he wasn't a good speaker. And you think about all that he's written and all that in his great, but he realized it was a skill, just like what you're saying. And he said that I had to learn the skill of it. And what great goal that you are bringing to our audience today about you have a voice, you have something to share, just be consistent. Find that person that will listen to you and give you honest feedback, like a coach or a consultant like yourself. And then don't give up. It's the mindset of I can do this, right? It's not that I can't. So how can people find you, Eva, if they're interested in Speak Shop and interested in getting some help with their speaking?
Well, we've already talked about LinkedIn. I'm very active there, posting content. Also at thespeakshop.com, I have a free resource there called 12 Questions You Must Ask for a Killer Speech. And I use this as my checklist on speeches that I help clients write, on speeches that I deliver myself. And it's a free checklist that you can use the next time you are giving a presentation. That'll just help you think through some of the dimensions of what makes a great speech. And so that's at thespeakshop.com.
That's great. And you're on LinkedIn as Eva Rose Daniel, correct?
Yeah.
That's how I can find you there. Okay, good. Eva, thank you so much. I loved our conversation. I think we could go.
It flew. As everyone can tell, I can nerd out a lot on this topic. I think my parents are still amazed that I've made a career talking about talking. And I feel a little vindicated from my childhood days because I was always the kid that got in trouble for talking too much.
Well, I think if I did your strengths, Eva, we would find that you have high communication. And people with high communication need to verbally process.
Yes, we do. We do all day, every day.
So how cool that you get to be in a profession where you get to verbally process every day. So congrats. I love it. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. And I can't wait for our audience to learn more about you on your website. So thank you for being here.
Great. Thank you so much.